Today we're talking about FundRise, and specifically one of the things that I'm really excited about that they brought onto their platform. As you guys know, if you use FundRise, they have fractionalized real estate, but it is in bigger projects. And not only that, but in a lot of cases, they're either developing these projects or they actually own them outright. And they offer both asset appreciation on some of that, and on some of the deals, they do just, a certain percentage yield on the development that they're building. So those are the two traditional options that they've always offered, at least over the last 2 years that I've been using them. But over the last 6 months, they have offered a new product called the Venture Fund. If you are not familiar with what that is or what that brings for you as an investor, well, let me give you a quick explanation. Basically, a venture fund allows you to invest in early startups, IPOs or pre-IPOs before they come onto the public markets. And a lot of these companies you probably have heard of, but again, don't have access to in a traditional way. Like you can't look up their ticker symbol on Robinhood and find them. And that is what makes this so interesting, is because what they did is they found companies, invested in these companies, put them in a giant basket that you can purchase. And for me, over the last 6 months, I have been acquiring this basket. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a synopsis of what it has done for me. And then we'll go into exactly how to start a FundRise account if you haven't already, and also purchase these investments. First, I want to cover the exact percentage returns that I've gotten over the past 6 months. Then I want to cover the companies that are in this fund. And then finally, we're also going to cover exactly how to set up a FundRise account, which is very basic, but also, of course, how to invest in this particular fund, if that is something that you want to do after hearing the rest of what I have to say. So first and foremost, the total returns that I have gotten over the last 6 months have been about 7%, which might sound like, well, that's not a lot, or maybe to some of you that sounds maybe like more than the S&P 500. So that's pretty freaking good, but let's talk about it, okay? So 7% is relatively good in the last 6 months comparative to the S&P 500, which typically on average brings in about 10%. And that has been true historically. Over the last 6 months, at the time I'm making this video, the stock market in the last 3 months has basically eaten away the profits that have come over the last 3 months before that. So in the last 6 months, we're basically at net zero. And in some cases, depending on the stock you look at, you might be negative or maybe slightly positive, whatever, right? But overall, S&P 500 we're talking about here is basically break even. Meanwhile, this venture fund has been able to return over 7%. It's actually at 7.6%, but I'm just for the 6 months because since we're in a brand new quarter this month, overall, we're at 7%. So awesome stuff. But what are the actual companies that we're investing in when we're investing into this fund? So let's dive into that next. First, we have a total of 16 companies that are currently in this fund. And this will vary as some companies come onto the IPO market, and that will be a part of how we get this appreciation on assets. The other way, if one of the companies gets some kind of funding round going and they bring on more debt, but at the same time, what that allows them to do is obviously scale their business because it brings our current price that we bought it at higher, right? So here are the companies that are in here. And one thing you're going to notice as I mention these names is that they're very familiar to most people who know about technology or AI, right? So first and foremost, we have OPENAI, which I'm sure you've heard of because they own ChatGPT and DALL-E. And in my opinion, and most people would agree with me on this, they are the leading AI superpower right now in terms of just general use. Then we have Databricks, Anthropic, Canva, and so for all my creative or investor friends, you've probably heard of some of these as well. Service Titan, Vanta, ANDURIL Technologies, which is a competitor for something like Palantir, DBT Labs, Omni, Ramp, Anyscale, Inspectify, Theory Ventures, High Touch, Jetty, and Immuta. And there you have the 16 companies that are in this fund. So how easy is it actually to set up a FundRise account? How safe is it? First things first, super easy. Follow the link down below. It also sends me $50 to my account as well, but I have no sponsorship or affiliation beyond that. It's just a standard referral that they give to all their customers. So if you like it and you want to send it to some of your friends, you are more than welcome to use your own link once you have an account. So sign up using that link. Then when you log in, it's going to ask a bunch of questions, just like any investment platform would, just to make sure that you're a qualified investor and you have money to both gain or lose, right? So the next thing that you want to do once you have that account set up, you want to fund your account. So you want to use your bank to set up that Plaid connection and then withdraw some money from your bank and deposit it into this just like you would on something like Robinhood, WeBull, or any other investment platform, right? Once you have it, then it will ask you, what do you want to put that money into? And you can, of course, buy supplemental income, which is something like an APY based off of development, properties. Then you can buy actual real estate as well, or fractionalized real estate, which is something that you get appreciation on the property on, and as well as a yield as they pay dividends every quarter. The last thing, which is what we're talking about today, is the venture fund. And the venture fund is the one I'm talking about today and most excited about because it has returned some pretty good returns already. And in addition, during a turbulent time in the stock market. Now, of course, the real estate market has been basically unaffected, at least for the most part in America. So the other funds are doing pretty well as well. But the venture fund, I think, has a lot of room to grow, especially as these mid or early stage companies come onto the IPO market or even just raise capital. I think it's a great investment opportunity, or at least an option if you're looking for something like that. And you want the upside of something that's early stage, but you don't want the hassle of trying to pick and time and also invest, as an accredited investor, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars into just one investment vehicle. Now you have an option for 16, and maybe it'll fluctuate to 15, maybe it'll fluctuate to 20 as more come onto the market or as they diversify their fund as well. So there you have FundRise Ventures. I think it's an awesome platform. Again, I'm not sponsored by FundRise at all. And as always, make sure to do your own research on this product. Like I said, there are options out there that are a little bit more risky, like Landa, like I mentioned before, but I think FundRise has a ton of potential ahead of it. And I believe in the future, it might even come onto the public markets on its own. So that would be very exciting. And we would also get more of an inside scoop of exactly how much money they have invested in these markets as a whole. We'd get a more clear idea of what their ins and outs are in terms of how much revenue they make, but also how much they have to expend to make that revenue. But at the end of the day, I think keeping it private would also be just fine. This is probably one of my favorite go-to apps that is still young and hungry for profit and being different than just the average market of, buying stocks, ETFs, things like that. So if you want to check it out, if you haven't already, if you haven't tried it out, definitely recommend it. But again, always do your own research. You know what they say, with higher risk comes higher reward, and also vice versa. So again, if you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and if you want to stick around and see what the YouTube algorithm's cooking up for you, go check out one of these videos up here next. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.